The desert breathes in silence. At dawn, the San Juan Basin is an ocean of ochre and shadow, its sandstone cliffs ignited by the first spear of sun. Wind teases the sagebrush and whispers through canyons where echoes linger like voices of the long departed. Before the Spaniards, before the maps, there were people here, builders whose hands shaped stone into sanctuaries high above the earth. They left no written chronicles, only walls that still catch the light of 1,000 forgotten mornings. Imagine standing at the edge of a vast plateau, the sky stretching endlessly, the ground shimmering with heat even in the cool hour of sunrise. Somewhere beneath your feet lie the footprints of a civilization that thrived where water is rare and seasons are merciless. Their story is carved into cliff faces and hidden kivas, waiting to be heard. This is not merely the tale of survival in a harsh land. It is the beginning of an epic that defies time, the rise of the ancestral Puebloans, who turned stone and sky into a world of meaning. Long before European sails pierced the Atlantic horizon, the American Southwest pulsed with life. Around 2,000 years ago, small bands of hunter-gatherers drifted across the Colorado Plateau, tracing the paths of rivers and seasonal rains. They were the basket makers, ancestors of the people we now call the Ancestral Puebloans. At first, their homes were shallow pit houses dug into the earth, their days marked by the chase of game and the gathering of wild seeds. But the desert taught them patience and precision. They watched the sky, reading clouds and constellations, sensing the rhythm of drought and abundance. Slowly, a transformation began. Corn, maize carried from the valleys of Mesoamerica, took root in the dry soil, golden kernels promising sustenance where once there was only chance. With maize came permanence. Families lingered through seasons, storing food in clay-lined pits, weaving baskets to hold the harvest. Picture an early settlement at twilight, smoke curling from low roofs, the smell of roasted corn mingling with desert sage, children chasing one another between adobe walls that caught the last pink light of the setting sun. Their world was modest but growing, a quiet revolution built on seeds and stone. By the first centuries of the Common Era, these early Puebloans began to craft something entirely new. Stone replaced earth for their homes. They raised walls of sandstone blocks, stacked with a mason's eye and bound with mud mortar. Small villages emerged like constellations across the mesas. Water, the most precious element, dictated every choice. They dug irrigation ditches, built check dams, and captured rain in hidden cisterns, transforming scarcity into opportunity. Their lives unfolded to the music of the desert. Summer rains drummed on flat roofs, winter winds sang through canyon corridors. The people listened, learned, and built. The landscape was no enemy, it was a partner. The red rock cliffs became canvases of meaning, on them they painted spirals of ochre and white, symbols of sun and migration, of stories too vast for words. Trade routes stitched their world to distant horizons. Shells from the Pacific coast, bright macaw feathers from the tropics, and turquoise from the mountains of New Mexico traveled across hundreds of miles to reach their settlements. Each item carried a whisper of far-off worlds, proof that even in apparent isolation, these desert dwellers stood at the center of a web of exchange. Through centuries, their architecture became more daring. Multi-story dwellings rose like sculpted hills, blending perfectly with cliffs and mesas. The earth itself became a home, a sanctuary. Night after night, elders gathered in kivas, circular, subterranean chambers, where firelight flickered across carved beams and smoke holes framed the stars. Here, under the endless sky, they told the stories of their ancestors and the spirits of rain and sun. Yet life was never easy. The high desert demanded resilience. Crops failed when rains withheld their mercy. Winters cut deep, and summer suns scorched the soil. But through ingenious planning and a communal spirit, the ancestral Puebloans endured, century after century. As the first millennium drew to a close, their population swelled. Villages grew into towns, ceremonial centers dotted the four corners like stone constellations. The seeds of greatness, of monumental cities and astronomical precision, were already sown. In the cool night, with the Milky Way spilling across the sky, a young child might have gazed upward and imagined the spirits who watched over them. Those same stars would guide their descendants to feats of engineering and culture that still astonish us today. The desert night deepens. Coyotes call across the open plains, their cries rising like distant chants. Somewhere, a drummer keeps time in a kiva, the beat carrying across centuries. From these humble beginnings, a civilization is stirring, one that will soon carve roads through the wilderness and raise great houses aligned with the heavens. The dawn of the ancestral Puebloans is complete. Ahead lies their ascent into architectural mastery and spiritual wonder, a journey from the quiet basket maker camps to the thunderous heart of Chaco Canyon, where stone and sky will meet in a symphony of power and mystery. The first rays of sun spill across the mesa tops, painting the sandstone a deep gold as if the land itself is awakening. In the soft hush of morning, smoke rises from scattered pit houses, curling into the cool air like offerings to the sky. By the turn of the first millennium, the ancestral Puebloan world is changing, quietly, deliberately, and with a vision that will outlast the shifting sands. Across the four corners, small farming hamlets cluster near precious water sources, seeps hidden in canyons, seasonal streams that twist through the high desert. Corn, once an imported curiosity, now rules the rhythm of life. Kernels gleam like drops of sunlight as they are ground into meal on stone metates, the grinding song of stone on stone echoing through the dawn. With maize come beans and squash, the three sisters that knit together diet and culture. Agriculture does more than feed bodies, it anchors families. It calls for planning, cooperation, and faith in a future beyond the next hunt. Stone begins to replace earth as the language of shelter. At first, these are modest one-room dwellings, walls of sandstone carefully stacked and mortared with mud. But each stone speaks of permanence. Families carve homes into alcoves, shaping the cliffs to fit their dreams. Roof beams of juniper and pine, carried from distant highlands, testify to effort and connection. The desert silence is broken by the steady rhythm of hammers and chisels, the soft thud of adobe slapped into place. Communities grow not as scattered clusters but as purposeful villages. Pathways link house to house, storage rooms to communal kivas. The kiva, circular, subterranean, and resonant with echoes, becomes the spiritual heart. Here, flames dance against dark walls as elders recount origin stories and children trace constellations through the smoke hole to the stars. The architecture is more than functional, it is cosmology rendered in stone. Trade threads these villages into a wider world. Turquoise from distant mines gleams on necklaces, seashells from the Pacific glint in the firelight. From far to the south come the bright feathers of macaws, carried across hundreds of miles. Each item is a story, a bridge between deserts and oceans, proof that these settlements hum within a vast network of exchange. In summer, fields ripple with green beneath an unrelenting sun. Women tend rows of maize while children chase lizards along the irrigation ditches. The dry wind carries the scent of roasting corn and mesquite smoke. Evenings bring song and dance, feet beating at a rhythm older than memory. In winter, the people gather close, weaving intricate baskets and blankets, their fires glowing against the cold. Yet survival is never guaranteed. The high desert is both provider and predator. Rains can vanish for months, a single failed season can thin the stores of corn and beans. To live here demands a keen understanding of balance between human ambition and the limits of the land. The people respond with ingenuity, stone-check dams to slow flash floods, terraced fields to trap the fickle rain, storage pits to guard against famine. Their world is a conversation with the heavens. Sun watchers mark the solstices, driving stone markers into the earth to catch the exact point of sunrise and sunset. Shadows become calendars, light becomes prophecy. These observations are not mere superstition but a science of survival, guiding planting and harvest with precision. The sky is both clock and scripture, a vast and constant partner in the cycle of life. As generations pass, the villages grow more intricate. Multi-room dwellings rise in terraced layers, each addition an act of faith in tomorrow. Children are born beneath stone lintels their grandparents set in place. Stories accumulate like the layers of sandstone, each tale, each ceremony, another brick in the invisible architecture of culture. Imagine a moonlit night on the mesa, the stars so bright they etch silver patterns across the canyon walls. From a distant kiva comes the muffled thrum of a drum, a heartbeat carried on cold air. The dancers' shadows flicker, their voices rising in chant to the spirits of rain and corn. Every sound seems to merge with the desert, until it is impossible to tell where human song ends and the land's own music begins. This is the age of seeds and stone, of settlements that cling to the cliffs and the certainty that the earth, if respected, will provide. In the steady growth of these early pueblos lies the foundation for wonders yet to come, great houses that will challenge the horizon, roadways that will lace across the desert like veins of intention, and astronomical alignments that will draw the cosmos into human hands. The night deepens, but the fire in the kiva burns on. Sparks drift upward, vanishing into the infinite sky, each one a silent promise that the story of the ancestral Puebloans is only beginning. From these humble villages, the pulse of a civilization quickens, carrying us toward the monumental heart of Chaco and the celestial architecture that awaits in the chapters ahead. The high desert sun blazes white as it climbs over the sandstone cliffs of what will one day be called Mesa Verde. Wind sweeps through juniper and pinyon pine, carrying the scent of resin and the dry tang of dust. Below these sheer walls, a new vision of life is unfolding. By the late 11th century, the ancestral Puebloans are no longer content with villages scattered across the open plains. They look upward, to the cliffs themselves, and begin to carve their destiny into stone. At first glance, the cliffs seem inhospitable, sheer faces of cream and ochre, broken only by narrow ledges and deep alcoves. But for the builders, these overhangs offer more than shelter. They promise protection, permanence, and a vantage point over the vast canyons. Families and extended clans set their eyes on these natural fortresses, imagining homes suspended between earth and sky. The work begins with a slow reverence. Men and women quarry blocks of sandstone from the mesas above, shaping each piece with stone hammers and chisels. Water, hauled in clay jars from distant springs, is mixed with mud to form a mortar strong enough to withstand centuries. Timber is cut from mountain slopes miles away, ponderosa pine and fir, then carried on backs down dizzying trails to the cliff base. Every log and stone is a testament to determination. Gradually, rooms rise within the protective alcoves. Single chambers link to form multi-story complexes. Ladders lean like skeletal spines against walls, while narrow passageways twist between courtyards and storage rooms. Kivas, round and subterranean, punctuate the settlements, their ventilator shafts and sapapu openings reflecting a cosmology that binds the people to the underworld of their ancestors. Imagine a day in one of these cliff dwellings, the sound of stone tools tapping, children's laughter echoing from shaded courtyards, the smell of roasting corn drifting from rooftop hearths. Sunlight filters through doorways cut with geometric precision, casting sharp-edged shadows that move like living sundials across the plastered walls. In the evenings, the glow of hearth fires flickers from hundreds of tiny windows, transforming the cliffs into constellations of amber light. These are not mere shelters, they are masterpieces of adaptation and artistry. Cliff Palace, with its more than 150 rooms, rises in elegant tiers like an ancient city sculpted from the canyon itself. Spruce Tree House nestles deeper in shadow, a honeycomb of interlocking spaces where families share stories beneath smoke-darkened ceilings. Balcony House clings to a ledge so narrow that ladders and hand-into holds are the only path in or out, a testament to both courage and strategic design. The location is more than aesthetic. Cliff dwellings capture the warmth of the winter sun and remain cool in the fierce heat of summer. Their elevation provides defense against rivals and a sweeping view of the fertile canyons below. From these heights, the Puebloans can watch the slow approach of storms or visitors, reading the horizon as if it were a living manuscript. But the cliffs demand more than labor, they demand unity. Construction of such scale requires coordinated effort, families working side by side, sharing tools, food, and purpose. Every stone lifted is a collective act of trust, a belief that their community's strength lies in togetherness. Here, architecture is a mirror of society, interwoven, interdependent, resilient. Life in these vertical cities is rigorous yet rhythmic. At dawn, women descend to the fields, their footsteps careful along the steep trails. Children fetch water from distant springs, their clay vessels heavy against small shoulders. Men repair walls and roofs, patching cracks from the freeze and thaw of seasons. Evenings bring dance and ceremony, the drumbeats of kiva rituals reverberating against the stone, echoing through the canyon night like the pulse of the earth itself. The people's spiritual life infuses every corner. Wall paintings depict spirals and celestial symbols, guides to the sun's journey and the sacred balance of rain and crop. Ceremonies mark the solstices, aligning human effort with the eternal dance of the cosmos. The cliff homes are not only defenses against the elements, they are instruments of cosmic harmony, carefully positioned to catch the first light of the solstice dawn or the glow of the moon in its cycles. Trade routes continue to hum, bringing turquoise, shells, and copper bells into these high sanctuaries. Stories travel with the goods, of distant rivers, of tropical birds, of faraway peoples who live where the seas never dry. From the cliff-edge balconies, elders tell children of their ancestors' migration from the underworld and the promise of harmony with the land, the sky, and the spirits. Yet the effort is immense, and whispers of strain ride the desert winds. Drought years press hard. Harvests sometimes falter. Water sources shrink in the relentless sun. The very brilliance of these dwellings, their grandeur, their dependence on coordinated labor and distant resources, requires a stability the desert rarely guarantees. Still, for now, the cliff cities stand as triumphs. They are poetry in sandstone, defying gravity and time, merging with the canyon walls as if grown from the rock itself. To approach them today is to feel the hum of ancient purpose, a silence that speaks of thousands of lives intertwined with stone and sky. As twilight falls across Mesa Verde, the sandstone glows deep amber, then fades to violet shadow. Fires wink alive in hidden alcoves, their light flickering like stars newly born. Above, the Milky Way arches across the heavens, a luminous river guiding future generations. The ancestral Puebloans have mastered the art of living with the land, turning harsh cliffs into enduring sanctuaries. But even as these architectural marvels flourish, forces beyond the horizon begin to gather, cycles of climate, shifting alliances, and the relentless demands of survival. The stage is set for the next act, where prosperity will meet challenge, and the cliff dwellers' brilliance will be tested against the desert's unforgiving will. Morning light spills across the vast San Juan basin, igniting the desert floor in shades of copper and rose. From the high cliffs of Mesa Verde to the deep canyons of Chaco, a quiet transformation unfolds, a network of roads and pathways that will knit distant settlements into a single, pulsing world. By the 12th century, the ancestral Puebloans are no longer merely builders of isolated villages, they are architects of connection. Look closely at the desert crust and you will see them, broad, straight lines etched into the landscape, sometimes 30 feet wide, running like purposeful scars across mesas and arroyos. These are not simple trails worn by wandering feet. They cut with astonishing precision, slicing through hills rather than bending to them, extending for miles with unwavering direction. From the great houses of Chaco Canyon, these roads radiate outward, north to the San Juan River, west toward the mesas, south to the mountains of Mexico. Travelers setting out at dawn would hear their own footsteps echo against the silence. The roads are cleared of vegetation, their edges sharply defined, their surfaces compacted by countless journeys. Some are marked by stairways carved into sheer cliff faces or by low masonry walls guiding the way. To walk them is to feel a deliberate intent, a message inscribed in stone and soil: we are united across the desert's immensity. Why such grand avenues in a world without wheels or beasts of burden? Trade is one reason. From the Pacific coast come shimmering shells, from the distant south, bright macaw feathers and copper bells. Turquoise, mined in the mountains, travels outward in return. Caravans of human porters carry obsidian blades, woven cotton, and ceremonial goods, their journeys lit by the silver wash of moonlight or the relentless blaze of the sun. But commerce alone cannot explain the road's almost spiritual geometry. Some align with celestial events, echoing the paths of the sun at solstice or the arc of the moon across the horizon. Archaeologists believe these routes may have been ceremonial arteries, guiding pilgrims to great houses and sacred sites where rituals stitched together the scattered communities. Imagine processions of dancers, painted and feathered, moving in rhythm along these stone-straight corridors, their chants rising to meet the wind. At the heart of this network stands Chaco Canyon, a city of monumental great houses, multi-storied and perfectly aligned with the movements of the heavens. From here, leaders and priests likely coordinated the far-flung settlements, sending runners along the roads like lifeblood through the body of a growing civilization. Signal fires or mirrors might have flashed across the distances, carrying messages as fast as the desert light. The construction of these roads is an act of audacity. Crews level boulders, dig through ridges, and build ramps over arroyos. Without metal tools or draft animals, they move earth and rock with sheer human will. Each mile is a triumph of planning and labor, a declaration that distance and terrain will not divide their people. Picture a late summer evening, the sky awash with crimson clouds, the air vibrating with cicada song. A procession moves along the Great North Road, its wide corridor lit by torches. Priests in cotton robes stride at the front, carrying effigies of the sun. Behind them, families walk in silence, their footsteps soft on the packed earth. Far ahead, the walls of Chaco glow in the last light, awaiting the convergence of distant clans for a ceremony that will bind them all in shared purpose. The roads reshape not only space but time. They allow ideas, techniques of agriculture, stories of ancestors, the rhythms of ceremony to travel across hundreds of miles. They turn isolated settlements into nodes of a single cultural web, a civilization aware of itself as something greater than the sum of its parts. Yet this intricate network demands constant effort. Maintenance crews must clear encroaching brush, repair washouts after flash floods, and remark the edges when desert winds erase the boundaries. In years of drought, when corn harvests shrink and water grows scarce, the labor of keeping the roads alive presses heavily on every village. Still, the lines endure, straight and silent, carrying feet and dreams across the shimmering expanse. Even today, from the air, the ancient routes are visible, pale lines etched across the red earth, defying centuries of erosion. They whisper of a people who understood that the desert is not emptiness but a canvas, that connection is as vital as shelter or food. As night settles over the basin, the last light fades from the mesas, and the stars ignite in endless procession. Along the ghostly paths, one can almost hear the faint echo of drums, the murmur of travelers who once walked these roads with purpose and faith. The ancestral Puebloans have bound their world together with lines of stone and meaning, preparing for an age when their great houses will blaze with ceremony and the sky itself will guide their every step. Beyond the horizon, however, forces are gathering, climatic shifts, rivalries, and the relentless test of survival. The roads, for all their grandeur, will soon bear not only pilgrims and traders but also the weight of uncertainty, carrying a civilization toward both its zenith and the first tremors of change. The desert at dusk is a cathedral of silence. Shadows lengthen across the broad sweep of Chaco Canyon, where cliffs of sandstone glow crimson before surrendering to indigo night. Here, in this austere heart of the Four Corners, the ancestral Puebloans achieve a triumph of vision and precision that will echo for 1,000 years, the great houses of Chaco. Massive and mysterious, these monumental complexes rise from the canyon floor like sculpted mountains of stone. Pueblo Bonito, the largest of them all, sprawls across 3 acres in a grand D-shaped plan, its walls climbing 4 and 5 stories high, its hundreds of rooms meticulously aligned to the sun and stars. Even now, its semicircular facade seems to catch and hold the horizon, a testament to a society whose architecture was both engineering and cosmic declaration. Stone by stone, the great houses were crafted. Workers quarried massive sandstone blocks from the surrounding cliffs, splitting them with stone hammers, then carrying them on their backs to the construction sites. Timber, thousands of ponderosa pine and fir beams, was hauled from mountains more than 50 miles away, each log weighing hundreds of pounds, each journey a feat of endurance and communal will. Without wheels, without pack animals, they built cities that rivaled the grand monuments of the Old World in complexity and ambition. Step inside Pueblo Bonito as it might have stood in its prime around the year 1100. The air is cool in the narrow passageways, light filters through carefully placed openings to illuminate walls plastered smooth. Circular kivas sink into the earth like sacred wells of sky, their roofs supported by cedar beams blackened with smoke. The smell of juniper fires mingles with the faint, earthy scent of clay and sand. Murmurs of ritual drift through the corridors, echoing off stone shaped by generations of patient labor. The canyon is more than a city, it is a ceremonial universe. Roads radiate from it like spokes from a wheel, linking distant outposts and smaller pueblos to the great hub. Each building is aligned with the solstices and lunar standstills, the walls acting as precise instruments of celestial observation. On certain days, sunlight pierces narrow openings to strike interior walls at exact angles, turning architecture into calendar and prophecy. Here, priests and astronomer builders studied the night sky, marking the cycles of moon and sun with an accuracy rivaling that of ancient observatories across the ocean. The famous sun dagger atop nearby Fajada Butte, a spiral petroglyph sliced by shafts of light at solstice, remains a silent witness to their mastery of sky and stone. Life in Chaco pulsed with ceremony. Pilgrims from far-flung settlements traveled the straight roads to gather here for festivals and trade. Picture a midsummer celebration. Dancers painted in vivid pigments circle a great kiva as drums reverberate like distant thunder. Smoke from sacred fires rises to the desert stars. Traders lay out turquoise, macaw feathers, copper bells, and bright textiles, treasures from hundreds of miles away, turning the canyon into a living market of sound and color. Yet Chaco was not simply a place of worship and trade, it was the political and spiritual heart of a far-reaching world. Leaders here coordinated agricultural schedules, maintained the vast road system, and mediated disputes between distant communities. Signals flashed across mesas, runners carried messages along the desert highways. From this canyon, decisions rippled outward like echoes, shaping life across a territory the size of a small nation. The great houses also served as vaults of memory and lineage. Rooms filled with grain, pottery, ceremonial regalia, and precious turquoise beads speak of careful planning and shared prosperity. Burials and sacred chambers reveal social complexity. Elaborate ornaments and rare goods accompany certain individuals, suggesting leaders whose authority blended spiritual and earthly power. But Chaco's grandeur carried heavy demands. The environment offered little mercy, rainfall was sparse, soils thin, and firewood scarce. Sustaining thousands of visitors required ingenious storage systems and constant movement of resources from far beyond the canyon's walls. The very success of Chaco depended on a delicate balance between human ambition and the harsh realities of the high desert. By the early 12th century, strains began to surface. Tree-ring records tell of worsening droughts, years when the summer rains failed and crops withered under relentless sun. Timber supplies dwindled as distant forests were overcut. The effort to maintain the great houses and feed their pilgrims weighed ever heavier on the surrounding settlements. Still, for a shining century, Chaco remained a beacon of order and ceremony. Even as challenges mounted, processions continued to arrive along the radiant roads, carrying offerings and hopes. The canyon walls glowed with firelight at night, the great kivas pulsed with chants and drums, and the sky above turned with slow inevitability, its stars mirrored in the geometry of stone below. Today, the remnants of Chaco Canyon stand as a testament to this astonishing chapter of human creativity. The walls of Pueblo Bonito, though weathered, still curve with impossible grace. The alignments to sun and moon remain precise, as if time itself bends to their design. Walk among the ruins at dusk and you feel the presence of those who shaped them, a hum of purpose lingering in the quiet air, a whisper of songs that once rose to greet the stars. Chaco's great houses embody the peak of ancestral Puebloan civilization, audacious, spiritual, meticulously planned. Yet the very scale of this achievement foreshadows the trials to come. Beyond the canyon, climate is shifting, and alliances strain under the weight of scarcity. The roads that once brought pilgrims and prosperity may soon carry stories of hardship and exodus. As night deepens over the canyon, the stones seem to hold their breath. The Milky Way unfurls like a river of light, reflecting in the dark windows of the great houses. The people of Chaco have etched their brilliance into the bones of the earth, but the desert, eternal and watchful, is already preparing its next test. Night falls like a slow tide over the high desert. One by one the stars ignite, sharp and cold in the dry air. From the sandstone heights of Chaco to the hidden kivas of Mesa Verde, the heavens stretch in every direction, a vast black ocean pierced with silver fire. For the ancestral Puebloans, this endless dome was not mere decoration, it was a living text, a guide, a promise. On these mesas, sky and stone converse. Great houses stand in deliberate alignment with the sun's seasonal path. At the solstices, light spills through narrow doorways to strike interior walls at perfect angles, turning architecture into an astronomical instrument. Priests and skywatchers keep vigil through the long nights, charting the slow dance of constellations, the subtle shift of the moon's standstill cycles, and the fiery trails of comets. Their observations are painstaking, their memory exact. Fajada Butte rises from the canyon floor like a sentinel. At its summit lies the sun dagger, 3 stone slabs framing a spiral petroglyph. As dawn breaks on the summer solstice, a single blade of light slices through the gap and pierces the spiral's heart. In winter, twin shafts bracketed in silent symmetry. To witness it is to see time itself made visible, the cosmos marking the seasons on a canvas of stone. These celestial dialogues are woven into daily survival. Planting and harvest depend on knowing when the sun will return northward, when rains are most likely to come. Corn, beans, and squash, the lifeblood of the people, respond to rhythms measured not in days but in the patient movements of heavenly bodies. The night sky is their almanac, the horizon, their clock. But astronomy here is more than agriculture. It is faith. Each solstice and equinox brings ceremonies that bind the people to the universe. Picture a winter night in a great kiva, firelight flickers on painted walls as dancers circle the hearth. Drums echo like distant thunder while a priest lifts his eyes to the smoke hole overhead, where the North Star stands unmoving, the eternal center of the turning heavens. The stars above are ancestors, watchers, and guides, their patterns shape stories of creation and migration. The very architecture of Chaco Canyon embodies this cosmic reverence. Buildings such as Pueblo Bonito and Chetro Ketla align precisely with cardinal directions. Doorways frame sunrises, plazas mirror lunar cycles. Even the great roads may trace celestial routes, linking sites according to star paths invisible to the casual eye. Such precision requires generations of observation, elders teaching apprentices, each detail preserved in memory and ritual. Beyond Chaco, other settlements echo this skyward devotion. At Hovenweep, towers rise like stone observatories, their windows set to catch the solstice sun. In Mesa Verde, cliff dwellings face the southern sky, their placements chosen not only for shelter but for the play of seasonal light. Across the four corners, rock art records the heavens, spirals for the sun, dots for stars, animal figures tied to constellations whose meaning still pulls beneath layers of time. To live beneath these skies is to feel their power. Imagine a clear winter night, the Milky Way arching from horizon to horizon like a river of frozen light. Coyotes cry across the empty basin as the Pleiades sparkle overhead, their rising a signal of the coldest season. A child looks up and sees not just stars, but the mapped footsteps of ancestors who first emerged from the underworld, guided by the same constellations. The sky also warns. Eclipses darken the sun without notice, meteors streak like sudden omens. Such events stir awe and caution, woven quickly into the web of stories and ceremonies. Perhaps a sudden blood-red moon calls for fasting or song, perhaps a comet's tail is a reminder of cycles beyond human control. Through these practices, the ancestral Puebloans transform survival into something transcendent. Their calendars are not ink on parchment but light on stone, shadow on sand, memory in human minds. Each observation is an act of devotion, a bridge between the fleeting and the eternal. Yet the very reliance on celestial rhythms underscores the fragility of life in this land. When drought lingers beyond the expected cycle, when rains do not follow the solstice as promised, anxiety seeps into ritual. The heavens, once predictable, can feel distant and unyielding. What happens when the stars no longer bring the comfort of certainty? Still, in this chapter of their story, harmony reigns. The people of the canyon trust the turning of the sky as they trust the beating of their own hearts. They plant by the sun, harvest by the moon, and dance to the music of the constellations. Their cities are observatories, their ceremonies dialogues with infinity. As dawn approaches, the eastern horizon pales to silver. One by one, the stars fade, leaving the unwavering North Star to hold the sky alone. In the hush before sunrise, the great houses of Chaco stand dark and patient, their walls aligned to the day's first light. When the sun finally breaks, its rays flood the plazas in golden fire, fulfilling a covenant between earth and sky that has guided these people for generations. But far away, unseen forces gather, subtle shifts in climate, the tightening grip of drought. The same heavens that once offered order will soon preside over a world of growing uncertainty. For now, though, the ancestral Puebloans lift their eyes to the brightening sky, confident that the universe still keeps its sacred time. The summer sun blazes unrelenting over the mesas, turning the sandstone cliffs of Chaco and Mesa Verde to molten gold. The air itself seems brittle, each breath dry as sifted dust. In the late 12th century, the Four Corners world enters a time of subtle but mounting unease. The ancestral Puebloans, who once read the heavens as a trusted calendar, now face signs that the covenant between earth and sky is fraying. The rains come late, then not at all. Rivers shrink to thin ribbons, seeps in the canyons dry to hollow silence. Cornfields that once rippled with green stand gray and stunted under a pitiless sun. Tree rings from distant mountains will one day record these years with stark precision, a great drought that lingers for decades, the longest and harshest in centuries. Within the great houses, the strain is unmistakable. Storage rooms meant for surplus grain hold only scattered kernels. Families weigh the risk of staying against the hope of distant water. Hunters range farther and return with less. Each dawn brings harder choices: ration the cornmeal or eat in defiance of tomorrow? Repair the kiva roof or save the timber for firewood? Tension ripples through once unified communities. Clans that shared labor and ceremony begin to guard their own stores more tightly. Petroglyphs of spirals and stars give way to images of shields and warriors. Defensive walls rise around villages, new settlements perch on inaccessible cliffs or atop isolated mesas, chosen for vantage as much as for shelter. The elegant geometry of Chaco's roads begins to feel like a memory of more certain times. Trade routes falter. Caravans that once brought macaw feathers and seashells from far horizons arrive thin or not at all. The turquoise that once gleamed on necklaces is hoarded, not bartered. Without the flow of goods and stories, the far-flung network that bound the Puebloan world starts to loosen. Inside the great kivas, ceremonies continue but with a new urgency. Priests chant for rain beneath the smoke hole as drums echo like distant thunder that never comes. Children peer upward, searching the empty sky for the promise of clouds. Even the precise alignments of doorways and solstice markers cannot command the heavens to yield. The people who once measured time in the slow dance of sun and moon now measure it in empty cisterns and cracked earth. Yet this is no quiet surrender. Across the mesas, ingenious adaptations arise. Farmers build check dams and terraces to capture what little rain falls. They plant hardier strands of corn, prune each stalk with care, and share knowledge across generations. Women weave tighter baskets and clay jars to preserve every drop of water, every grain of meal. Survival demands invention, and invention demands hope.